Good morning, Americans. This is your favorite alien on the afternoon of Thursday, December 7th, 2023. Well, today is the commentary on what? A date that will live in infamy. Yes, December 7th, 1941. And unfortunately for President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, it's turning out to be a date that will die in history because the Americans have forgotten about it. This generation today says to hell with Pearl Harbor and the people who died in there. We care not even an iota of what happened there. And for you crazy people who in September will celebrate September 11, 2001 for the 23rd time, give it another 65, 70 years, and it'll be, history. But you won't get that point because you're so diluted that the election next November, between two people that you hate, and you don't want to vote for either one of them, and you won't vote for Freddie the Freeloader because you don't want to tell the country, this is the way we think of our country right now. We need help. No, you won't do that. So, tough luck. Today is December 7th, 2023. Most of the people that were in Pearl Harbor in 1941 are gone for the ages. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Franklin who? Is a forgotten president today. Was he a perfect man? Oh no, he had a lot of faults. Was he a good guy? Well, Mrs. Roosevelt would have said no back in 1914. And she made that all through the end of her life until 1962. But she stayed loyal to him and became his best partner. In politics, that is. But as far as marriage, well, that was destroyed in 1914. See, President Roosevelt had the habit of discarding people, unfortunately. And that's not putting a downturn on the president. That's just who he was. Every president's got their faults. Some are worse than others. Good example, Donald J. Trump. But December 7th, 1941 was an interesting day. I bet you a lot of you Trumpers, those crazy Republicans, and you call yourself the Trumpers, don't realize that there was a big rally going on that day for Make America First. Yeah. It's like you MAGA guys, Make America First again. Oh boy. Yeah. Well. And what they were doing back in those days were just like Donald J. Trump is doing today. And they were trying to make President Roosevelt the villain. Oh yeah, we're going to get into a war and it's going to be Roosevelt's fault. Oh yeah, because he's trying to push us into a war. But with all his faults that he had, Franklin Delano Roosevelt knew that the United States was going to end up in that war, whether they liked it or not. And unfortunately, nobody else thought like him. In the military, even his cabinet, no. So, there's been 2 cases of the United States being caught with his pants down. December 7th, 1941, September 11th, 2001. 60 years apart. A Democratic and a Republican president at the helm. And a lot of questions that have never been answered in either case. That is the way it is, Americans. But during December 7th, like I said, there was this rally with America First. And they were a very group that Donald Trump has probably read up on because he started MAGA. And look what that cost you. January 6th, huh? Well. But there was a congressman, and sorry, I forget his name, was doing a speech on that day. And this reporter came to him just before he went on to the speech and told him and showed him a flash that he had gotten. The Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor. Ooh, yeah. But this senator, I believe it was senator, pardon me, I said congressman, but senator, damn, if I could remember his name, I would put it on there. You know, you get old and you have senior moments. But he went up and did the speech, and he railed at Franklin Delano Roosevelt. You know this was a Republican, right? Just like Donald J. Trump is railing at Biden. Well, at the end of the speech, after he railed, he did tell the people there, I got some news here. The Japanese have just attacked Pearl Harbor. Didn't say anything else. And he left. You know that speech was the end of the line of America First. Big time. And the reason why is because you don't understand what Franklin Roosevelt had to do. He had a very bad case of sinus infection, and it was making his day miserable. Then he gets the reports on the attack at Pearl Harbor. He also gets a report on what happened. He talks to the governor at the time of Hawaii, who was a territory, and he tells them that we're still getting attacked. We've had second wave, and they were expecting a third wave. Well, history recalls that the third wave was not launched by the Japanese. They thought they had done their time. But all through the rest of that day, Roosevelt's getting these reports. And they've been trying to reach Douglas MacArthur over in the Philippines, and they're having a hard time getting a hold of him. Now remember, Douglas MacArthur was very much racist on the Japanese side, along with most of the Congress and military at the time, because they thought, those Japanese, they can't compare to us. What can they do to us? They can't mount something disgusting like this to us. Really? They must have had German help. Yeah, right. And that's the way of thinking it was in 1941, kind of like Donald J. Trump's way of thinking today. But they couldn't reach Douglas MacArthur, and they finally did. And he told President Roosevelt, who didn't like him, by the way, his predecessor fired him. Now, Douglas MacArthur was arrogant. He was a good general, yeah, but he was also arrogant, overconfident, and wow. And he told President Roosevelt, "Oh, you don't have to worry about the Philippines. We got our eyes up and our ears open, and we are ready." Yeah. And this is about, what, 5:25 p.m., if I remember my history? December 7th, 1941, when they finally got a hold of Douglas MacArthur. President had, like I said, a sinus infection, and at the time they didn't have any antibiotics. So they had to deal with this, and they couldn't, the only way to eliminate the inflammation in the sinus was cocaine. Maybe that's what his doctor did, because his doctor treated him, and he probably used cocaine. We don't know, because after President Roosevelt died in 1945, his medical records were destroyed. But it's either neither here nor there, because it made him cut for the rest of the night. And he was supposed to have dinner with Edward R. Murrow. Okay? Now, he was a distinguished and very much known political, he was like today's, you would call him a paparazzi today. Although I would compare him to Walter Cronkite. He was supposed to have dinner with him that day, but he also had a meeting with the cabinet. And he had gotten the speech that his speechwriter had done for him, and he changed it. And he put in December 7th, a date that will live in infamy, over what the guy had written. He wanted a short speech. And he went in there and told the cabinet, well, mostly. But you must remember that Mr. Roosevelt, that's Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was a very interesting president. He didn't tell everybody everything. He kept everything under the vest and told them what you needed to hear to get what he wanted to get. He was a very shrewd politician. But in this case, he had a problem, because he was listening to all the estimates of U.S. losses at Pearl Harbor, and the ships and the lives lost. And also about the planes that were sitting there, and they were target practice for the Japanese. And he could never figure out, because remember, he was Assistant Secretary of the Navy back in 1914. Just like Mr. Churchill in England was the Lord of the Admiralty in 1914. They both were in positions that cost them in World War I. Okay? So he told the cabinet what happened. To the most part, we've got serious damages and serious loss of life. He knew more. He didn't tell them anymore. And then he told them that don't tell the congressional leaders that are waiting outside for you about this yet. Okay? And in those days, leaks were not happening today like they are in the Biden and Trump presidencies. Yeah. So they did most of the part. The cabinet adhered to that. And I believe it was Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War, Hall. Anyway, his name was Hall. Mr. President, we need a big, long speech. We got to tell the American people and drive them into, get them into Yeah. Okay. Uh, kind of like a Woodrow Wilson speech in 1917 during World War One. So here, Americans, President Roosevelt, he wanted to get rid of Mr. Hall. Out the door you go. Okay, so he told him, okay, yeah, I'll look at the speech and I'll make it as long as I can. Okay. Yeah, but he wanted to get rid of him. At about 11 o'clock or so, I believe, he met with Mr. Ed Murrow over there. And Mr. Murrow had already been seeing the horrors of this war because he was broadcasting the Blitz from Britain from 1940s to, I think it was September 1940 to May 1941. And he was broadcasting it to the people. And those of you whose parents had radios, you know that you could hear Mr. Edward R. Murrow right on schedule. 7 p.m., he was on. Well, they had sandwiches, so the history says. And according to Edward R. Murrow, President Roosevelt laid everything out. Now, can you imagine? If a president today lays everything out to say, David Neer or Lester Holt, ABC and NBC, or even Norah O'Donnell over at CBS. Yeah. Oh boy, that would be all over the place, right? And he didn't tell Mr. Murrow, this is off the record. And according to the information that has been handed supposedly from Mr. Murrow, although I have no way of corroborating that or not, but history, what I've known about Pearl Harbor, tells me that, they had this meeting eating sandwiches and drinking a beer, and Mr. Roosevelt's hand just hit the table. Because he was telling Mr. Murrow, what in the hell are those planes doing? Open target practice for the Japanese. Oh boy, that really irked him. And I can understand why. What were those planes doing out there? Just unline the Japanese, use them as target practice, and boy. So Mr. Murrow left. And wow. He could have gone over there and reported this as an exclusive. Yippee, I got all the information here. But no, he never did. That is a newsman to me, like Walter Cronkite. Today's newsmen, like I said, David Neer, Miss O'Donnell over at CBS there, Nora, and Lester Holt at NBC. Oh yeah, and don't forget the Fox guys and the CNN guys. They will be blabbing it out all over the place. Yeah. Well, about 45 minutes after Mr. Murrow left, he gets communications that, the Japanese have attacked the Philippines. And remember that a couple hours earlier, 5 hours or so earlier, MacArthur had told him that, we got our eyes and ears open and we are ready. And he found out that all the planes were sitting there just like they were in Pearl Harbor. And MacArthur was nowhere in sight. Now you got to remember that the top Navy and the top Army guy, the Navy guy, Kimmel, I forget who the Army guy was. Short, I think it was his last name. The top two military guys in Pearl Harbor lost their jobs as derelicting of duty. You never saw that with Douglas MacArthur, huh? And I bet you that Mr. Roosevelt, who had banged his hand on the table with Mr. Murrow because of the Pearl Harbor situation, was very upset about that. But needless to say, he went to bed the next day. He delivered that 6 minute 45 seconds or so speech, not the long one that Hall wanted, and galvanized the American public. 4 hours later, both houses declared war against Japan. It took them 4 days in 1917 to declare war on Germany. But you guys know the rest. This is your favorite alien saying, "See, Americans? This is, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. And you guys forgot all about Pearl Harbor." Good day.